Hello second years, welcome to my 500th attempt at recording this video. This is your second asynchronous SSP video presentation, and in this session we're going to be concentrating on phonology and phonics and the importance of phonology as a precursor to the teaching of systematic synthetic phonics. So as I've said, we're going to be looking at phonology and phonics. We're going to think about the skills that you need in order to become a successful decoder, and think about your school-based learning and how that will have an impact upon your subject knowledge and also the experiences of the children that you're going to be teaching. Now, it's worth to note before we go any further that there are a number of SSP schemes available. Most of them will have their own accompanying resources and lesson plans, so it's really important that when you get into a setting, when you're on placement, that you speak to your mentor as soon as you can. You speak to the English coordinator, the literacy lead, whatever their title is, and find out what scheme they've chosen as a provider. There are a number of them. Some that you'll recognise, things like Jolly Phonics or Readwrite Inc. There are some that you may not have heard of, but what is really important is that you adhere to that scheme. You find out what's been covered so far, at what point in the scheme the teaching phase is up to, and you begin to develop your lessons from that point. But it's really vital also that you stick to the process of teaching as prescribed by that scheme. It's really important that that familiarity is there for the children. Now, it's not statutory to choose an approved scheme, but I would guess that most schools, most educational providers will have chosen one of them. Ofsted does not have a preferred scheme, but what's important is that the approach stated here is rigorous, systematic and used with fidelity. So any resources should exactly match the grapheme-phoneme correspondence progression of the chosen approach, and that it achieves strong results for all pupils, including the most disadvantaged. That means that the scheme's been assessed and approved externally and in principle meets the DFE criteria for an effective systematic synthetic phonics programme. However, if a school has chosen to write their own, then that's absolutely fine as well, but it must be able to demonstrate those outcomes as well. So I would guess that most settings really are going to have chosen one of those approved schemes, but it's not possible within your centre-based university training that we can cover all of those schemes. It's just not feasible in the time limit that we have. What's important to note is that lots of those underpinning principles will be the same, and it's a case of how that is presented to the children in a systematic way, and that will be to do with the scheme that the school has chosen. So once you understand the principles which underpin systematic synthetic phonics, the scheme that's used to deliver that shouldn't have too big a bearing. It will just simply be a case of familiarising yourself, and that will be through observing experienced teachers or familiarising yourself with lesson plans and resources, or ideally a combination of those things. So what must it have? It's essential to teach systematic synthetic phonics to children in reception and Key Stage 1 years of mainstream school. The programme must have sufficient support for children in reception and Key Stage 1 to become fluent readers. It must provide a structured route for most children to meet or exceed the expected standard in the Year 1 phonics screening check, and all national curriculum expectations for word reading through decoding by the end of Key Stage 1. So it's quite a big ask. Really, we're looking at it beginning in reception and the impact that it has upon children right through to the end of Key Stage 1. And now there's lots of secondary schools who are having to develop their systematic synthetic phonics knowledge as well, for children who maybe haven't been successful. So it's really vital now that children are achieving these things by the end of Key Stage 1, so it's not having a knock-on effect as they move to Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 and above. Now, you've heard me use the term lots and lots of times, but let's just really spend a moment to think about what does SSP actually mean. Well, it's comprised of those three terms: systematic, synthetic and phonics. So systematic meaning something which is often, regular and planned. It's planned teaching, and it's systematic in the fact that it begins with the easiest sounds and progresses through to the most complex. If you think back to your teaching on the alphabetic code, or if it's something that you haven't encountered yet, you can certainly take a look at that. I will be covering it in our English sessions, but the alphabetic code moves from the simple to the complex, and that's what we should be thinking all the time with the teaching of systematic synthetic phonics, of that progression, and not moving children on too quickly so that they become confused, but also making sure that there's sufficient challenge for them, that if they are already demonstrating their ability, that we can very quickly and rapidly add that challenge so that they can progress. So the synthetic aspect, well, synthesize is about bringing things together, so involves separating words into phonemes, sounds, and blending the phonemes together to read. So we're separated. We've got that separate idea of phonemes and how they can be split up, but also how they can be put back together in order to read the word on the page, and that's obviously also applicable with children's grapheme knowledge as well. So it's dependent on that. And just to spend a moment, to really highlight, I suppose, the difference, because here we're talking about systematic synthetic phonics. There are other approaches to phonics, one being analytic phonics, and that involves splitting up parts of words, looking at word patterns and comparing them to other words. But with systematic synthetic phonics, we're looking at breaking down words into the individual phonemes to the smallest unit of sense, and supporting children to recognise and create those sounds and then blend them together in order to create a word. Now, right at the beginning of this video, you saw the word phonology, and I'm going to spend a little moment thinking about phonological awareness. What is it? Phonological awareness, if I can say it, is defined as the ability to identify and manipulate the sounds in words, and it's recognised as a key foundation skill for early word level reading and spelling development. And phonological awareness comprises a whole range of skills, and this is all what really comes before the teaching of phonics. Phonological awareness, we're thinking about the ability to hear and manipulate units of sound. Units of sound could be things like syllables, onsets, rhymes, phonemes. If you're not sure what those words mean, I would strongly suggest that you spend some time taking a look at those and researching them. If you want support with that, then I can certainly help you with that. That's not a problem, but it's really important that you understand what those terms are. So if we think about syllables, I want you just to spend a moment now and think, work your way through these questions. So segment syllables. Can you segment the syllables in the word rainbow? Can you delete rhymes? So can you say pencil without the sil? Can you isolate phonemes? What's the first sound you hear in cup? Can you blend an onset and a rhyme? So what happens if we put ch and in together? And can you match phonemes? What's another word that starts like lap? Now you can pause here if you want to, but I'm going to go through some of the answers for those. So what parts do you hear in rainbow? Well, hopefully syllables, you will recognise them. If you don't, syllables you can think of as like the beat of a word. A really easy way to do this is to put your chin underneath, your finger underneath your chin, and every time your chin moves down would really identify a syllable. So in rainbow, you can feel that your chin is moving twice. So rainbow is a word with 2 syllables. Can you delete the rhyme from a word? So say pencil without the sill. And it would of course be pen. Isolating phonemes, what's the first sound you hear in cup? It's of course k. And blending onsets and rhymes together. So ch and in would be chin. Another word that starts like lap. So you could have lip or lead, because they all start with the l sound. So a quick quiz. How many syllables are there in apple, China, donkey and hippopotamus? Spend a moment now answering those if you can. Okay, so apple, we've got apple 2, China 2, donkey 2 and hippopotamus 5. Okay, so the odd one out would be hippopotamus. Now syllables aren't a definite science. Some of it will depend on accent, dialect rather, sorry. So how you pronounce those words can affect it as well. But I think we could agree that hippopotamus has more than 2, and likewise China doesn't really have as many as 5. So sometimes there might be a little bit of a discrepancy. Sometimes it can be to do with the pronunciation and which vowel sounds maybe a certain dialect might have that's different to others. But on the whole, we can say with some confidence that those ones are correct. So phonological awareness is about being able to hear and manipulate units of sounds in spoken words, and that can include syllables, onsets, rhymes and phonemes. And as I said, if you're not confident with that, that's absolutely fine. We can work on that together and I can support with that. There's some reading that's recommended around it. Phonemic awareness is about the ability to hear and manipulate the smallest unit of sound. So you can see from the image I've put here, we're filtering all those different types of sounds out down to phonemic awareness, which is really about those individual phonemes. And phonics is about the teaching of these phonemes, representing them through an understood graphic system. So phonemes. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that indicates a change in meaning. So it can be the difference between the words gap and cap, because those words are identical apart from the initial sound in them. So one has the g and one has the k. Okay, one is the voiced syllable sound and one is the unvoiced sound. So g is the voiced and k is the unvoiced. The difference between fine and fight is the difference between the phonemes n and t at the end. So f, I, n, f, I, t. Although they're represented very differently with their graphemes, essentially those phonemes are the same apart from those 2 at the end. And similarly, the difference between stale and style is the difference between the phonemes in the middle of the word. So st, st, a, u, or st, I, u. One's got the a, one's got the I sound in it. So you can see in those 3 examples that one's at the beginning, one's at the end, and one's at the middle of those words. And changing that phoneme has created a different word in each case. Phonemic awareness and phoneme manipulation So as I put a little note here, when you see those two lines, this means we're talking about the letter sound and not the letter name. So blending sounds, put these sounds together. T, o, g. Segment the sounds. Can you separate the sounds in cat? Can you add sounds? So can you add a s to the end of pig? Can you delete a sound? So can you say dog without the d? And can you substitute a sound? The word is dog, and instead of d, can you say f? So of course you'd have dog, cat, pig would become pigs, dog without the d would be og, and in the last word, dog becomes fog. So when we're thinking about systematic synthetic phonics, we're thinking about being able to identify sounds in spoken words, recognising the common spellings of each phoneme, blending phonemes into words for reading, and segmenting words into phonemes for spelling. So I'd like you to update your learning journey and reflect on your confidence in phonics. How confident are you to identify the syllables in a word? How confident are you at segmenting a word for spelling and blending sounds for reading? And can you explain the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness?